I would be remiss if I ended the show without talking about what's happening in Sanford, Florida, and the second-degree murder trial of George Zimmerman, the individual that shot and killed an innocent African-American teenager because he went to, allegedly, according to George Zimmerman, he was threatened and he had to, quote-unquote, stand his ground, and thus he shot Trayvon Martin in cold blood after the police told him, "Don't go, sir. Stay in your car." Either way, that notwithstanding, the case and jury selection begins this week. And I got to tell you, folks, I want everybody to watch this case, and I want you guys to watch this case actively and intensively and pay attention to the nuances here. Because I think this case would be a watershed for, I would say, the new civil rights movement, no matter which direction it goes in. One, ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, has everything to do with, I would argue, the death of Trayvon Martin. And the NRA, they also have everything to do with the death of Trayvon Martin, because when people like George Zimmerman, who are felons and who are crazy, can have the right to have a gun, and then beyond the fact they can have the right to have a gun, they can have the right to say, I was protecting myself because I walked up to this random black kid and I shot him because he was threatening me, even though I walked up to him and I started chasing him because of a stand your ground law. Thus, I'm good to go and I could walk off without scotch-free and whatever. And then I think to add to that point, we heard testimony this week, or rather, excuse me, testimony is the wrong word. Robert Zimmerman, George Zimmerman's brother, said the American people need to get to know who George is, and George has been demonized by the press, and you know, George is pretty much the victim here. And I tell you, America, I beg to differ. I think that, as you know, the victim here is Trayvon Martin, and let's not forget this. And let's not also forget this piece. This case is not about Trayvon. This case is about George Zimmerman. The George Zimmerman defense team is going to try to make this a case about the state versus Trayvon. This is not about Trayvon. This is about the fact that George Zimmerman killed an African-American boy. It could have been anybody's boy. It could have been any boy. But in this particular case, it was an African-American boy. Right? And I think that's what made the situation uniquely worse, and that's what made it so hard for them to get an arrest, and it made it so hard. This is why this is a civil rights case. Right? Because this law was pretty much created to benefit people like George Zimmerman and hurt people like Trayvon Martin. Either way, I digress. They're going to try to make this case about Trayvon. It's not about Trayvon or Trayvon's character. That's irrelevant. All that matters is that Trayvon went to 7-Eleven to get some Skittles and he wore a hoodie. I do it all the time. The last snowstorm we had in DC, I left my home in a hoodie and walked to CVS. Now you're telling me that somebody can come out of their car and shoot me and say I'm a threat because I have a hoodie on? I beg to differ. Either way, what the outcome of this case, this jury selection is going to be part of that. If George Zimmerman walks free, this should be the rally cry for all individuals, whether you're black or brown or white and are concerned. Right? And think about it like this. You take the George Zimmerman case and you add it with the stand your ground law, and you add it with stop and frisk in New York City, and you put all these pieces together, and you put the fact that you hear members of Congress saying the most insulting and hurtful things about the First Lady and about the President of the United States, and you say to yourself, this should be the call for a new civil rights movement in this country, because it should be. People are holding up the immigration. We heard Greg talk about that earlier in the show. All these things. The George Zimmerman case should be, what I would argue, a rally cry, if this guy walks free, for people to say we need a new civil rights movement and the time to do it is now. Right? And in the opposite direction, if George Zimmerman ends up getting convicted, as he rightfully should, right? This should be still a rallying cry, because there's more work to be done. Let's not rest on our laurels and celebrate our victory here and be like, yay, George Zimmerman's in jail. We're gonna go back to our normal lives. Let's continue this fight. Let's continue the pressure. Let's continue to create pressure till we create real and lasting reform, to where everybody is not judged by the color of their skin or by who they choose to love, but everybody is judged on an equal playing field, the content of their character. That's it.